When Wayne Pivac was sacked as Wales coach, with the return of Warren Gatland announced, I think I jumped the gun a bit when predicting that they would finish in third place for the Six Nations due to Gatland's excellence. The dark days of Welsh rugby weren't over yet at the start of the Six Nations. Though Wales avoided the wooden spoon, they sunk to an even lower point as matches against Ireland and Scotland ended in very one-sided score margins, while a key decision-maker of the team was picked up on camera berating a newbie on his 5th test cap for what was just a rookie error. After Wales were also just 24 hours away from a players' strike following several off-field issues with the WRU, things looked grim. With the Six Nations over though, things look a world away. France have established themselves as clear World Cup contenders for later this year, with this match especially telling us so, but if Wales, after a late correction of this game's final score, told us that they could be contenders too? Well guys, let's find out. Kia ora guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Max, I'm the host over here at the Black Jersey. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you enjoy my content. Do need to get this ratio up. What a game between Wales and France. It was an absolute thriller, high scoring, exactly what the 80,000 fans paid to see. Let's get into analysis of the first half to show everybody why Wales weren't quite able to get a decent scoreline despite a fair bit of dominance from the forward pack early on. France finished the match with a pretty satisfying scoreline, but the early stages of the match are absolutely with Wales, who used strong pressure up front to eventually send George North over for the opening try after a long period of possession. We noticed that France are a little rattled during the driving maul, as although Adam Baird and Alan Wynne-Jones are standing in as blockers to prevent a turnover, Romain Taufifenua is still attempting to fetch the ball while the maul begins to then twist towards the touchline courtesy of Francois Crowe's entry to add some extra weight. Wales, however, flick their pack further forward after letting go of France, with Ken Owens still holding on to the ball. Though he's in a great position to score, massive shout out goes to Romain Ntamack for this try-saving tackle. With plan A failing, it was always awesome to see that Wales have a plan B. As Rhys Webb fetches the ball, Nick Tompkins enters frame on the right-hand side and calls for a strike play, which of course leads to North's try. We'll now switch to the bird's eye view camera angle to show that Antonio and Olivon are yet to get back on side, while Bai is of course marking Jones. Because Antonio and Olivon are still getting back on side after the twisting maul, Jonathan Dante immediately exits the ruck and marks Baird, knowing he is the only French player on his feet who can complete such a tackle due to being 10 kgs heavier than Fiku, who's on his outside. Because Dante is marking Baird and Ntamack is on the ground, we see Fiku marking Tompkins and Peno marking Bigger, but nobody to mark North. The space was superbly read by Tompkins and Webb, and North is now the 9th to highest try scorer of all time. Though Wales have much of the early dominance, France explode into life in the 10th minute after spending the early stages of the match figuring their opponents out. What we have here is a pretty fair intercept attempt from Tompkins. As the ball leaves Dupont's hands, we see Tompkins step over the halfway line, while France have structured themselves in a hands down the line formation with Ramos at 10, Olivon is a decoy runner, while Ntamack is trailing towards the 12 channel in front of the other 3 backs. Aldred is presumably at wing to cross the gain line from the line that we can see through the white arrow, because Crowe and Peno are all the way on the other side of the pitch, blocked by the ref and by Flamand. The black arrow indicates that Ramos's left is the only possible direction a pass can trail in. Tompkins drifts forward with the intercept. We see his arm out in the freeze frame while the ball is mid-air, but he's mistimed this completely, because Tompkins has had to come out to take the ball, not an attacker. He's forced into a side-on position. Ntamack now runs around him while Olivon is in front of Wainwright, The only possible defender who can fill the hole Tompkins has created is North, who is also side on, so we won't be able to complete the tackle on Intermac. North simply turns around and trusts his men to take the attacker down, with Reece Zammit guiding Intermac towards the tackle of Bigger. Before Bigger makes contact with Intermac, we now see a moment where I got a bit mad at Intermac for not passing to Dupont. Intermac in this occasion, however, is correct to keep the ball for himself. He has Olivon sprinting forward to become a ruck clearance. Dupont will also be able to fill that same role if a ruck forms where Bigger is here, as Wales don't have any forwards on side. As a ruck is yet to form, Dyer and Reece Zammit can also legally tackle Dupont here, while Intermac will be in a pretty hard place when it comes to a ruck clearance. Intermac instead holds off the pass for another 10 metres before offloading. What we now see is just a simple piece of excellent skill. Dupont tosses the ball halfway across the pitch, and Penaud crosses over unmarked for the first of his 2 tries. France run it back in the 26th minute with a penalty goal to Ramos after Marchand wins a nice turnover at the breakdown. Ramos then decides to slot another one after the Welsh scrum collapses just 4 minutes later, because the long anticipated 3rd try of the game turns up. As Dupont investigates for the ball once a ruck with high numbers has collapsed, we see Ken Owen still getting to his feet, as well as a very bad problem that also cost Wales some very avoidable points against Scotland. As we can see from the graphics I used in my Scotland versus Wales analysis, backs wrapping around from a mauling into open space left Rio Dyer to mark 3 players, Hugh Jones, Blair Kinghorn and Kyle Steyn, who's out of frame, all on his own. This led to Steyn scoring off a later cross kick by Finn Russell after Dyer was late to attempt the tackle that we can see right now on screen. In this game, said problems result from Josh Adams and Louis Reece Zammit chilling over here on this space, filled by Thibaut Flamont, despite George North also being in a possible position to mark him. Due to the width of this ruck, Wales have formed in a defence line that is very comparable to the maul defence that we saw against Scotland. Wyn Jones marks By while Bigger marks Crow. As we cut to the wide shot to see Intermac's pass out wide to Ramos, we see Tompkins marking Intermac, what appears to be Reece Webb marking both Antonio and Olivon at the same time, while Dyer is marking Penaud. As Fabien Galtier has probably shown the highlights of Scotland versus Wales to his French team, and demonstrated this habit of the Welsh backs to unnecessarily pack themselves in around the maul, I'd say that Dante, out of frame on the wing right now, has been purposely stationed there to power over the line if Wales indeed improve their own failure around the maul defence. The initial overlap allows for Penaud to shift the ball out to Dante, with Dyer in a side-on position. Dyer is 84 kgs, Dante is 110 kgs, physics does its thing, and Dante scores. Although Wales looked great for much of the first half, some key differences in combined playing experience have allowed France for a half-time margin of 20-7. Let's have an examination into the half-time stats to see why Wales were perhaps a little bit behind. As we can see, with a 57% possession rate and a 69% territory rate, those half-time stats truly were in the Welsh favour. But as we get over to things like metres run, France have achieved more of those. They've also achieved more clean breaks, and though Wales are making more passes and offload, France are really just stopping those chances with 4 turnovers, while there were also a few occasions where Wales didn't release the ball from the breakdown. It's just that work over the ball from the likes of Francois Crowe, Gregory Aldred and Julian Marchand that were really just getting in Wales's way. If it weren't for guys like those playing for France, imagine how things could have turned out. We're not seeing too much of a difference by any means when it comes to tackle success. Same for goal kicking, both 100%. Ruck success though, that discussion about the breakdown in France's work ethic over there, completely accurate. They have won 100% of the rucks off their own ball in the first half, whereas Wales, they have lost a few. So that is one of those areas of difference once again. Lineouts 100% as well. So it's really just coming down to execution off these stats once these stats no longer have relevance to what's happening when the ball's in play. Scrums one though, that's another point of difference. Wales have lost both of their scrums, whereas they've conceded 4 penalties to 3 from France. So there's very, very little separating the teams, aside from the few things that we have looked at that are allowing France to keep that scoreline in their favour. Let's now look at the second half to see how things changed for the better for Wales, and now France were able to just wrap it all up with some entertaining stuff for their fans. Now that we're into the second half, there isn't a crazy amount of analysis to perform for this next try, but there are a few nice touches we'll definitely examine for Weenie Atonio's try. As Cyril Baille falls short of the try line, we see Dante stand near static while Marchand enters the ruck to keep the front foot ball for France. While Dante holds the line, we see a nice wraparound by Aldred and Olivon to form a two-man pod directly outside the ruck, while Dante stands outside them on the blind side. Intermac looks to use these guys as a blocking mechanism to spark further attack. We can see this in his body language for Dupont to pass. We now turn our attention to Thomas Ramos though. We see the direction of his head facing the blind side of the pitch a few frames later as Aldred taps Olivon's shoulder for a possible carry. Ramos has recognised a mismatch on the edge of the field, so he overrides Intermac's game plan by stepping into first receiver himself. Intermac sees what Ramos does, and as they play together at club level for Toulouse, Intermac trusts the call from Ramos, who skips out to Weenie Atonio. While Intermac is probably muscular enough to dot the ball down himself, Ramos has turned a 50-50 chance into a 100% guaranteed try. Atonio is literally the biggest player in Test rugby, and he swats Rhys Zammit away like a fly before scoring his first ever Test try to celebrate 50 tests for his country. I'll probably have some nice things to say about Wales at the end of this video, but they definitely did have a mismatch dip. The build up to a try by Gaël Fickou begins with Marchand's line out throw to Olivon, with the maul forming straight away. Though a detach from the maul by Marchand to carry as illustrated wouldn't guarantee a turnover to Wales, Gareth Thomas grabs Marchand's wrist to force France to go out the back. Thomas has however backfired majorly over here. While France have Dante at first receiver, he isn't a stupid crash ball runner, he's an intelligent playmaker who won't just one-man team the game. He sucks bigger in big time, delaying his pass out to Intermac, who takes control of the game plan off Dante once he gets the ball. Aldred, who did not contest the line out, has been left in open space to run a nice decoy at Tompkins, which gives Intermac a bit more time to dictate who runs the strike play. As I said earlier, Wales have seriously gone to sleep at this moment. Josh Adams is all the way over here behind Faletau or so, leaving Rhys Zammit all the way out on the wing to mark two players at once while Dyer is in midfield. Dyer has now had to mark two players, Fickou and Ramos, as Wainwright incorrectly read the circle space as where a ruck would form. Because Adams has been defending from fullback at set piece in this game, Wainwright's absence from the main defensive line after being sucked into a fake ruck leaves Dyer no other choice but to commit to a player who may not receive the ball. As Dumortier begins tracking around, Dyer has a second thought, giving Fickou all the time in the world to run onto Intermac's pass at pace. Due to Adams not coming around more ahead of the line break and giving Dyer no assistance, Fickou is now free to score unmarked off a well-communicated strike play. Wales are now behind by 27 points, but they show the true spirit of a Gatland side. They aren't ready to give up, and they show us why in the 56th minute. Taufifenua and Flamand do their best impression of the All Blacks' ruck presence and don't even bother entering the breakdown, so all Thomas Williams needs to do is shove Francois Crowe to get the ball while Tipperick blocks off Fickou, a centre who is showing more of a willingness to win a turnover than his two locks. Things don't look too promising for Wales when we cut out to the wide shot. France have 7 defenders in a straight line and Ramos at fullback to cover any chip kicks, while Wales have just got 5 attacking options in a pretty inconclusive shape, I will say. North pretty much has no other choice to take the ball into contact off a pass from Bigger, so runs between the shoulders of Wardy and Falatia before offloading to Bigger, who in turn gets it out wide to Rhys Zammit. Dumortier, who is on just his 5th test cap, makes a rookie error that will definitely be ironed out as international career progresses, and he's caught off with his eyes off Adams. Rhys Zammit sends Adams through and the next ruck forms just 5 metres from the try line. Williams is now given front foot ball thanks to France's failure to contest the breakdown again. He fires a bullet pass off to Bradley Roberts, who is already sprinting into the space. Roberts powers over Taufifenua and Falatia, racking up his first international try as well. I'll take a pretty similar approach to the Thomas Williams try as I did with the Weenie Atonio try. It's a true case of just doing the basics right, with North towering over the gain line after a scrum, soft hands from the forwards and some opportunism for the halfback. As we see Roberts land on the ground, Tompkins and Bed furiously clean out Bestie and shallow row from the ruck, while Gregory Aldrich makes a bit of a rookie error and he backs away from it all, creating a gap between himself and the ruck. As we've discussed many a time on this channel, a side-on position isn't ideal for a tackle, and Williams notices this one straight away, sniping at the hole to score. We get a real treat to end the game with 2 more tries in the last 10 minutes. France makes several darts at the Welsh try line under advantage before Ntamack finally pulls the trigger and calls for the ball. Ntamack realises that distributors draw defenders in far more than crash ball runners due to their threat of enabling others outside them, so he holds the line and uses himself as bait. As Tompkins is sucked into Ntamack's space, North can't afford to drift much wider due to the possibility of a grubber kick by Fiku. North needs to keep the defence together. While North does the right thing to mark Fiku and shut down such a chance of a kick, Halfpenny hasn't spread wide enough to cover Peno, and Dyer hasn't spread wide enough to cover Ramos due to France battering towards the try line and the forwards so many times. Ramos is able to fend Dyer and draw in Halfpenny before securing Peno was placed as the top try scorer of the competition with a nice pass. For the final try of the game, Wales pulled a nice trick out of their box to have the last say and make the losing margin much more respectable. We'll use the bird's eye view angle for analysis on this try to show that there isn't really a way forward for Halfpenny at all. While Aldrich, Dante, Falatia and Peno have all been obstructed from tackling Halfpenny, Beard and North have also obstructed Halfpenny from getting a decent crack at this gap we've highlighted between the two messes over here. As neither team will profit off this, it's play on. While Ramos has had the backfield covered for France, Halfpenny makes a big call to fire the ball out wide and use Tipperick as a distributor. With Peno reading the play, Tipperick can't run himself, so goes wide to Dyer. We get a great step and a nice fend as Dyer ensures that a conversion by Halfpenny will leave the full-time score as 41-27. Let's head back to the Ultimate Rugby app and display the full-time stats to see what set France and Wales apart. As we can see with the final score, possession is still 54% for Wales, but territory is all the way down to 51% because France have been really just playing that ball as much as possible throughout the second half. Meters run, you can see France are excelling over there. They've beaten fewer defenders from Wales, but what's mattered with these defenders beaten is they're continuing to get that backup when it comes to the breakdown. They've also made more clean breaks off fewer gain line carries, and the passes are definitely going more in their favour because they had a better share of possession in the second half. The offloads, Wales are doing a few more of those, but it's just those wee little errors of communicating when the offload's on that were upsetting Wales throughout most of the game. We can also see Wales were winning a fair few more turnovers in the second half to keep that possession rate for France down a slight little bit. This is also helping Wales to get far more points on the board as they were able to hold that ball for longer periods of time. France just made 2 turnovers in the second half. Tackle success, that there's pretty even, won't need to discuss that. Same with the goal kicking once again. The ruck success, we're seeing that improvement at the breakdown from Wales once more. Both teams finished the match with a 97% ruck win rate. France were able to win fewer of them because of those Welsh turnovers, whereas Wales were able to keep their standards up a wee little bit more when they had their own ball. Line-out success, not crazy different, we won't discuss that. The scrum though definitely has to lift for Wales in that first half because they were far better in the second. The penalties given away as well. This is the reason why France are getting so many line-outs inside the Welsh half, because Wales are conceding penalties inside their own half a fair bit 4 times, and the opposition half also 4 times. But yes, things are looking very promising for the French. They're looking very promising for the Welsh as well, because Wales, with that fighting spirit, they weren't able to let the occasion get to them like they would in the PVAC era. Circumstances aren't deterring this Welsh side anymore, and especially with all the new players that got given a go during the Six Nations, that's totally true. France, though, they thoroughly deserve to win this match. They had a ball of the time with the ball in open space, and congratulations to them on the win. Congratulations also for both teams on a very successful Six Nations. For France, it was successful because they only lost one match. For Wales, it was successful because they were losing by smaller margins and they were growing in much more confidence. Can Wales win the World Cup? I don't think so, but they will definitely get out of their pool now that they're starting to build towards something, and now that they're starting to look mentally tougher. Thank you very much to my patrons now that the video is over as well. Really appreciate the support from you guys. And one more reminder as well to new viewers to subscribe to me and like this video if you enjoyed it. You can also go and support me over on Instagram, over on Twitter, and my opinion journalism website, where I do things like player ratings for Super Rugby games, All Black games, discuss women's rugby, and I'll try and make a few more Six Nations pieces of content if I can get like licensing for photos from them or something, because I do use my own photos over on that website. Thank you very much for watching the video, guys. Awesome stuff to France and Wales, and I'll see you next time from Max.